we always come back to Obello and we're like, if we can do our job with all the most amazing technology that's available now, today, right? Like, wouldn't it be amazing if every single person out there can always create beautiful design?
I've worked on many brands in my career as client, agency, and internal design team. I've seen firsthand how challenging it is to deliver brand systems that companies can faithfully use across the ever-growing list of digital touchpoints, surfaces, and product lines. In this episode of The Art of Building, I want to introduce you to the founders of Obello, an AI graphic design platform that's transforming how design and marketing teams scale creative on-brand content. This is The Art of Building.
Hi, I'm Tyler, one of the co-founders and GPs here at Baukunst, and I'm proud to be joined today by Ollie and Ben, the founders at Obello. Thanks so much for being here today, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Tyler. Yeah, we've been excited to do this. I know we've been planning for it for a while.
Yeah.
So yeah, finally here. So thank you.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for having us.
Well, it'll be fun. I think we'll have a lot of time here to talk about the company Obello and kind of how your personal stories led you to where you are today and what the company's working on. Maybe just to go back in time a little bit too. You both worked together for a long time at Character, really one of the top branding agencies, certainly here in San Francisco, but really the world. And yeah, we just wanted to start there and kind of recap some of the story of the agency. I mean, Ben, you were one of the co-founders. You started it back in '99.
Yeah, not to date me or anything. It's been a long time. Yeah,
totally. Well, maybe just describe the history of the studio a little bit, and I'm especially interested just to hear about how brand design evolved over that time period as well.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a big.
Yeah, I think when we started out, there were a lot of graphic design firms, right? Yeah. But not a lot of branding firms. Branding firms are normally big companies like Landor, Pentagram. So oftentimes smaller shops, they do graphic design. That means they do brochures, annual reports. I worked on a bunch of annual reports before I started Character, right? But we wanted to start out actually a branding agency. And when you're branding companies during 1999 and now is very different, right? So before, think of brands as big monolith, right? You think about big campaigns, big systems that will stay in place because good branding, as you know, you occupy a space in somebody's head, right? So what you want to do is reinforce that over and over again. So think about Just Do It. Think about Target, the color, everything they do it over and over again to reinforce it, right? And then you would run quarterly campaigns, right? But now when Ollie and I are working with new brands, at Character, the brands are much different. They're not monoliths. They're made up of a bunch of different levers that you got to switch on and off depending on your audience, depending on what's happening in culture. So you think of systems now are living, breathing systems that are adjusting, moving, similar to the Balkans identity. You guys adapted, move it around for different applications, right? So, the experience that we're having right now with Obello, companies now are putting out campaigns every quarter and then waiting for the metrics to see how they perform. They're making those adjustments every day, every hour. We're doing the same thing at Obello, adjusting our campaigns, our brands, our tone and voice based on what's happening out there and what we're hearing, right?
Yeah. And even over the course of the time at Character, even companies were navigating the transition to just being more digital brands even at the time too, right? A lot of the design was kind of still rooted in print or out-of-home advertising. And I think you guys played a big part of how some of those legacy brands started to express themselves online and even play in that world too. So I see a lot of echoes and this next phase of the industry that we're getting into now, even with that transition from more legacy media to digital, back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I remember when I first came on at Obello, we were doing a lot of print applications.
You mean Character?
Character, sorry.
Yeah.
Character. And, we would demonstrate how these systems are executed across things like business cards.
Yeah.
I mean, and then obviously it just went a lot more in sort of direction of, okay, show me how this brand, exists in the context of my mobile app or in terms of like, animation. And so the systems went from just being a lot more static, rooted in sort of more traditional mediums to just being very dynamic, very motion-based, very fluid, So that was a big shift that I saw just in the time that we were at Character.
Maybe just like shout out some of the other brands that you worked with when you were at Character too. Who are some of your kind of like most notable clients?
Yeah, we got to work with DoorDash. I got to work directly with Tony Xu. One of his requirement is that if you're going to work on this, you're going to have to dash. So I was like, I'm happy to dash. I want to experience what it's like. We got to work on Netflix's global brand system. We got to, what
Nike, like Nike. Restoration hardware. I think when in the earlier days of Character, we worked with a lot of lifestyle brands, right? Like Levi's was a big client. Nike when I was there, and then more and more technology brands started to come on the scene. And the thing that we did really well was we basically treated technology companies in the same way that we treated lifestyle brands. And so we kind of reinvented how technology brands look and felt. And it was more telling a story of like how these technologies integrate into your daily behaviors and rituals, much more of a lifestyle storytelling bent. And I think one of the pivotal accounts that we had was, remember we rebranded Dropcam.
That's right. Yeah.
And Dropcam was acquired by Google, and it was one of the first like big hardware acquisitions. And then we had all these hardware companies, all these technology companies come to Character because they wanted some of that magic pixie dust, right? And so we were able to take all this lifestyle branding that we've done and done very well in the past and bring that to technology companies, and that was very successful for us. And then suddenly we found ourselves working on lots of hardware products.
Yeah, including with you, right? Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I think anything with the word smart in it
somehow
found its way to Character.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of headphones, a lot of video, cameras, all of that kind of stuff. So that kind of put us on a different trajectory. We still had the lifestyle work, but then we started doing a lot of the technology brands. And then obviously in this moment in time, we're in South Park, we're in Soma. We had these amazing technology brands. I mean, our neighbors were Twitter, Uber. I remember we had like Zim Ride across the road that actually became Lyft. Yeah. I mean, these people were all around us, and they all wanted some of what we had to give, and that was really when Character began to blow up.
Yeah, we went from 16 people to like 40 plus people in less than 2 years, and then we moved into our bigger office. But we got to work on Uber's original system. We had 12 people in our office working specifically on Uber. And then, so we got to work with WeWork. I think that one of the things that you brought up was there's a lot, we initially worked with a lot of brands in the past that a lot of consumer touch points were basically like physical things, like packaging. They might see an ad, they might see a newspaper ad or something like that, but later on, companies, even like WeWork, WeWork came to us, said, look, obviously, we want to be known as a technology company. Yeah. Help us develop our app. What would that app experience be like for our members? When you think about that, you're like, okay, that's really interesting because so much of WeWork is about like the physical space. But what if you brought that physical space into a digital product? What would that be like, So we got to spend almost like, half a year imagining what would that look like? What would it feel like? What would it be like to connect different people in different cities, So that was a really cool project that I got to work on.
I wanted to talk about both of you a little bit as a team. I think you have this like amazing like partnership and track record of working together too. Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about like how that works? I'm kind of curious like what roles you usually serve, maybe how much you support each other. Just kind of curious about how you guys describe that.
I think obviously Ben and I have been working together for like 14 years. Yeah. And I think we complement each other really well because some of the things that maybe I'm pretty good at, Ben's not so good at. Yeah. And the things that Ben's really good at, I'm terrible at, right? And so we have very much like, without even kind of talking about it, we have very sort of defined lanes,
Yeah, what would you say is Ben's superpower, and what would you say is Ollie's superpower?
Okay.
I'll let Ollie go first. Depends on what he says about mine. I have
Okay. All
a
right.
couple of answers.
When Ben wants to do something, he will work tirelessly until that thing is done, and his level of execution is unbelievable, right? Ben's also a yes person as well. So when something comes at us that's like a hurricane, and my immediate reaction is like, oh my goodness, I don't think we can do this. Ben is always like, we can do this, and then that kind of slowly brings me around to, yes, we can do this, and I appreciate that. So yeah,
Okay, that's very
those
nice.
are two nice things. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm being genuine here, so yeah,
Yeah. I think like
be nice.
my Ollie's a Scorpio. I'm also a Scorpio. My wife is a Scorpio.
Yeah.
My best friend is a Scorpio. You know, I think generally, you know, I'm comfortable around Scorpios. You know, and so I think one of the things that I've worked with Ollie for a long time, and I was telling my wife this a while back, and I was like, look, there's a lot of people that have a certain amount of gears. And when Ollie, whether or not he's doing his triathlon or he is camping with me and we're carrying a bunch of stuff on our backs, he would always have an extra gear that nobody else would have, you know? So that's one of the things that I really appreciate with Ollie is that I need him to have that extra gear sometimes because I just cannot get to the next point, right? And when I see him do that, he basically is carrying me, you know? We used to row in our camping trip. We would actually row for like miles with our packs in a boat, you know? And once in a while, I just like sit back because he's such a powerful rower, you know? So I think that sometimes that happens and it gives me the time to basically catch up. That's one thing.
When we sold character to Dentsu, in terms of like defining like what next chapter was, I didn't ever doubt that whatever I did, it would be with Ben.
Yeah.
So we went around his house and we like sat down, we're like, okay, what's next? And like, it didn't actually occur to me that I would go off and do something, you know, separate from Ben, you know.
Cool. Thank you, Ollie.
Yeah. And now he's the godfather of my
two girls,
children.
yeah.
So we're close.
Yeah, we're
so
close, yeah.
You know, I know a lot of, you know, early stage companies, like the number one reason is that the founders fall out or, you know, lose enthusiasm for each other or what have you. But yeah, I think we have a pretty strong tight bond.
Were there any, I guess, what were some of the hardest projects that you had to do at Character? Maybe that were either the most demanding, just with the level of output or the timelines, or ones that were some of the most challenging to work through as a team?
We'll probably do give you two different types of answer. I'm probably going to approach it more from the business aspect, and Ben probably more from the creative side. From the business side of things, the projects that I think we found the hardest were when we were working with brands that had a higher profile, were more established, and that was, you know, often these accounts that were competitive. So we often went into like, you know, they do their agency and a review, and you're, you know, often in a set of maybe 3 or 5 other agencies. So you have to fight to get the project. I mean, and often in those instances as well, the budgets weren't always flush because I feel like the companies, they were kind of riding on their own brand. That they were like, you should be grateful to win this project. So so it wasn't always like a cash cow, but it was definitely a company or a brand that you wanted in your portfolio. So you'd fight for it, and then there would be just a lot of layers to decision making, right? I mean, that's natural at a large company, and often there'll be board members involved. Often you do the creative, and then there'll be some kind of like legal review as well. And then in some instances, you have, if they're founder-led brands, the founder would probably come in at the 11th hour and want to change everything, right? And so those are often the hardest projects, like logistically to kind of, get through. But often the most rewarding in the sense that it feels great when you're out in the world and you see these brands, see the work that you worked on with these companies out in the wild, as well. So a bit of a double-edged sword, but...
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can see that too.
I'm not naming any names.
Yeah.
You see how I did that?
Yeah. I think like at Character, we had the luxury of working with amazing big brands like, Netflix, Apple. But the most challenging projects for me was when I was working with startups. Not because they're challenging as clients, but you have more weight on you because if Netflix doesn't get a new logo from me, they're gonna survive as a business. Nothing's gonna change. What we're putting on there is basically 0.0001% value to their company in full honesty, right? But for early stage companies, those founders are coming to us because they have dreams, they have vision, and they need our help to get them there, I need the help from my new growth team, from my customer success team to get us to the next stage with Obello. So when we're working with early stage companies, I am heavily invested, heavily involved. I lose sleep if I don't think our team is actually doing the right job. And that's why Ollie comes, he knows that. I will spend the weekend to rebuild the entire thing if I need to, because I know the things that I do will make an impact. It's a competitive space. They want to launch to the world. So those for me were some of the harder projects because also the founders are looking at me right in the eyes, and they're excited what I'm about to present. They're not like just another, they're not middle management or just reviewing work that's going through the process. These are people with ideas and visions, and I think those are the more challenging projects, the ones that we pour more into technically, and it was more demanding because you're across the table from the founders.
Yeah, I think that's like one of the, this whole series is called The Art of Building, and I think there's a few of these like common echoes that we hear in talking with people all the time too. And I think like for me, one of the things that keeps bubbling up in stories is like this need to like protect some element of like passion and play and attention to detail against like hyper efficiency all the time too. And like it's almost like you need to give yourself the space to like follow those things. And sometimes you find really valuable things. You build relationships where it's not all about like the textbook logical extreme efficiency of things, and you just like you have to really it's not something that happens naturally, like otherwise like the efficiency kind of just wins all the time. You have to really protect like the ability and like the bandwidth to be able to do that for yourself and other people. Cool. I kind of wanted to talk, Ben, you're obviously like a world-class designer yourself. You've hired lots of designers. You've developed a lot of design talent on your team over the years. I'm curious, specifically like in the kind of brand design world too, like what you really see like makes a great designer, like what kind of attributes like make them really excel in that world. I think, from my experience, it's sometimes not just the work itself, but it's things like being able to sell a client on maybe a more opinionated design, or helping people like take a risk or like push them towards better outcome or better work. But I'm just curious to kind of like how you think about that yourself, and I'm sure that's different for every designer, but really kind of like what you see like make somebody excel in that world.
I think I can, there were a lot of designers at Character. One in particular, her name is Natasha. And she's a creative director at Apple now. And she did some of our most beautiful brand system for Playground, the VC company. She worked on, Google. She came up with Google Home stuff and all that stuff. And she was never trained as a designer. She was an illustrator. And she submitted her portfolio in to do illustration. But when we saw her portfolio, we're like, you know what? And she wanted to apply as an intern, okay? So when you remember this, when she applied, it was just illustration work. But I saw like a level of storytelling, a level of craft and sophistication in her work, and it was just pure creativity. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna give you an internship. Just come in. but I'm going to treat you as a designer. Okay, when we are presenting, you are also presenting. We had a very flat, so when I present my logo, it will be the same board as like an intern, right? And Natalia's work was constantly chosen by the clients, Fanatic, Nike. She did, work for a Playground. That was her very first project, and it was like a ball and a stick, and that's the entire system. And then right after that meeting, it's like, you're no longer an intern, And now she's thriving at Apple, doing amazing work, So actually it's a philosophy that Ollie, myself, and Rishi, Tish, and the other partners at Character, we always look for like the potential, For example, and I keep going rambling, but Tony, our product designer at Obello, never designed a piece of product in his entire life. So when Ollie and we started Obello, I was like, hey, Tony, I want you to be our product designer. He goes, you can hire real product designers. I don't even know how to do it. I was like, but Tony was responsible for all production design at Character. So every piece of work that gets released, every app that gets dev'd, he was responsible to make sure that it gets out in a systematic way. I was like, well, we are designing a software to do that. It will be like a carpenter, coming up with their own tools. You can just look on the internet how to do things, you have good aesthetics. He designed it pretty much everything that you see on Obello today, And I am so happy and privileged to be able to work with somebody like that. And it was all, once again, comes back to what Ollie, myself, believe in, is just really about potential,
Yep, absolutely. I see a lot of those things, the same like attributes that make a designer really good in that space are the same things I think you're trying to mirror with Obello, like the software platform as well now too. Because you're really, I think, like just being especially opinionated about building a tool for this profession to really like amplify their work, help them do the best work of their career that they're really proud of. And so it feels very much like a collaborator, and that you want to like excel in the same ways that another teammate would be.
Yeah, absolutely.
The selling piece, the ability to sell, though, is also important. It is a bit of storytelling. It's a bit of theater. If you want your client to pick a bold direction, then you have to build trust with them first to be able to push them in that direction. So. I'm just thinking back some of the really good designers that we had at Character. They were able to, go into the strategy as well, to understand the strategy, to understand the problems that the clients were having, to understand the audience, the landscape, really kind of get inside their minds, deliver the work, but also back up the work with why this is the direction that you should pick. So it was always steeped in strategy. It was never just about this is beautiful. Yeah. Pick one of these three. It was always the story, the narrative, the why, the setup. There was a big piece of it as well, So we when we were hiring designers, yes, we were looking for lots of things. I mean, we hired amazing designers that went on to, they hold roles in amazing brands now because they kind of ticked all of those boxes.
Yeah, absolutely. Who would you say, who did similar things for you in your career? Like, do you have specific mentors that you really felt like you grew up under, or were part of sort of a professional heritage, or maybe they're just kind of heroes that you looked up to, that were maybe you were growing in a more self-guided way, but somebody you like looked up to and really wanted to emulate?
Honestly, the people that have inspired me, the people that I've got to work with, across the last 20 years. I mean, the thing I found most rewarding about working at Character was just being around such creative people. And I was on the, dare I say, the non-creative side of the agency, more the operations side. And I used to get excited about what I was doing because, if we brought in a big client, then I knew that we get a great opportunity to do great work that will get out there in the world, and the people that are building it will be happy to see that, and it's very rewarding. So for me, it was the people around me, just hanging out with Ben and watching how he works was like an inspiration, for me. So.
I think it was like my first job, right? There was this famous design firm called K and Associates. And what they specialized in was annual reports. But what was, and that was the first time that I got to work with like the team at General Magic. It was like the all-stars of the all-stars of highly inventive, intelligent individuals that went on to do amazing things on their own. Through that, we, Andy Rubin was there, and later on we did Android's brand identity. But I was I was in my early 20s, and I was basically thrown into that situation where I would go in and talk to these people and got to work on amazing projects, right? But the requirement of being at that design firm is that you do not only design, you would have to write your own copy. And it's like, I never got to learn that in school. I got to do the formal graphic design part of it, But I think what it did was it trained us to be strategic thinkers, not just basically good graphic design, like coming up with great aesthetics, right? And that was like a big learning thing that I never took for granted. And later on, I sat next to a guy named Lian, and he basically, because I was so frightened of writing my own copy, talking to like these executives who I know they're amazing talent. He's like, and he coached me through it. So when we opened up Character, he was actually our first hire, Then in addition to coming on our first hire, he also coached us on working on projects with different clients, So it was amazing. So,
That's a really cool cultural element. To do the designing and the copywriting. That's badass. So let's get into talking about Obello itself now too. How would you describe Obello in a sentence?
Just one sentence.
I'll let Ollie do it first, and then I'll do my version. I don't think we share one,
In a sentence, I can give you two maybe. So,
okay.
Obello is an AI graphic design platform that empowers designers and marketers to create beautiful on-brand content at scale. Yeah. What's your answer, Ben? Or do you differ from that description?
I think it's the same, except at the core of it is an AI graphic design platform. And our singular mission is to empower every single person within an organization to be able to create beautiful on-brand design.
Let's talk a little bit about how Obello is transforming how companies like deliver on-brand content. Okay. I think from, you oftentimes in your old life would pass the baton off in a style guide or brand guidelines to an internal team. And they would oftentimes go spend small fortunes on campaigns and production designs that like translated to like everything from ad campaigns to internal documents to field guides, things like that. Can you talk a little bit, almost just like open up the curtain for other people that haven't lived in that world in the past around like what that looks like traditionally, and then how things are changing for your customers now?
Yeah, totally. At the end of all of our engagements, you're absolutely right. What we hand over is a document in order for anybody that touches that brand would know how to execute based on the vision that we work with our clients on, right? So let's think about the output first. Okay. Every single company out there would now probably need to create a lot of marketing materials, right? They need to create paid, they got to do organic social and all that stuff, emails and all that stuff. And if you think about how that is traditionally done, you have your brand guidelines, right, to execute against. Then you got to figure out, where do I get my brand assets, right? Where do I get my logos? Where do I get my photography and all that stuff? That sits in a digital asset management, if you can afford it. Most people that we're talking to right now, even our friends that are on Obello right now, they're keeping it in a Dropbox, right? unorganized, you can't, it's really hard to search for it, to share it and all that stuff. So you got to first get to the brand asset, okay? The second part is you got to open up a design software, right? In order to create design. So that is normally Figma, right? Figma is the number 1 platform right now for all of our clients, right? But you can't just have static content. You guys are using CapCut, right? You got to add motion, you got to add videos, you got to add sound to it. So you got to open up some sort of editing software. Okay, Premiere, you guys are using Premiere. That is a highly specialized skill in order to open up Figma, to understand the document of how to execute on brand. Then you got to search the material. Then you got to open up a editing software to produce one piece of content, right? Imagine you have to push out like 20 pieces of content daily. You can't go through that process, right? So when we saw this entire process being inefficient, that really rely on highly specialized skills, we're like, is there anything that we can do using some of the best technology that's available for us right now, which is AI? Can we use that to simplify that?
Absolutely. Because there's a lot of just like, not waste, but there's a lot of effort and cost and time that goes into producing that content. And sometimes even the design intent is not translated faithfully in all cases either too. That's so right. It's kind of a quality issue, not just a resource issue.
That's right. And we do, all of our clients that are on Obello, they care about quality. They care about the storytelling part. But what if they can just focus on that part of it and allow the craft to be the rules that we actually implemented into the tools that people use? And when you drop in a headline, when you're like asking AI, recommend me a color palette or something like that, it would do it, but you don't have to think about it. You can think about the storytelling. What image do you want to use? You can use our image gen to generate images that are exactly to your art direction. You just prompt it. Tell us what you want,
Yeah, it's really powerful.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about your strategy with data. I think you guys have been doing some really innovative stuff behind the scenes to achieve the quality of output that you would have shipped at Character before too. I think that's just a very, very high bar that you all like stand behind as a team. So kind of curious to just talk a little bit about how you do that. I mean, you're almost teaching an AI to be a creative director in some ways too, or at least to do to be a member of the team so that the humans can do more of the creative direction is maybe more in line with what you just described too. But can you talk about like your process for that?
I think the biggest learning that we had, and it took us a little while to get there, was quality in equals quality out, right? And so if you feed the machine with bad design, you get bad design out the back end. And so at Obello, we've been training our generative layout assistant model on designs that we have created with our own hands inside of Obello. So this kind of like leans into our background of beautiful design, creating a lot of content to basically teach our model how to be a good designer, right? And to do that, you have to teach it good design, but you also have to teach it bad design as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Obviously design is like some subjective, but it's also quite mathematical as well, right? So when you look at a design, you look at it from a composition standpoint, a symmetry standpoint, balance, breathing room, whether it's on a gridded structure, and so
hierarchy.
Yeah. So there are things that you can teach it, and it learns, right? And then we get to a point where it can identify itself. So our own product can identify good design and bad design, and therefore it's kind of like self-perpetuating. So before we were the ones making the decision. This is a good output. This is a bad output. Now it can do that itself, right? And that just accelerates the learning process.
Yeah, we have a very young person on our team that came up with that, and he's absolutely brilliant. And he's like, I just taught the machine good design versus bad design, and this is something that he's extremely proud of.
We call it the judge.
We
It's called the judge.
Yeah, I wanted to name it the creative director, like yes or no. He calls it the judge. I'm letting him name it, but that's exactly what his focus is right now.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, we would also have to teach our ML team to be able to judge good design, because we're not in the room with them when they are doing this, So it's almost like walking through all the fundamentals of graphic design with our ML team. So now they tell me when I see a billboard or when I see an ad, I can tell if it's good design or bad design. And then Lynn, she's like, I never knew about this, She's our head of ML. So we're extremely proud that we can impact our ML team from a good or bad design decisions,
I love it. Yeah. I think there's a big thread in like the dialogue around how like AI is changing professions right now, where everyone's a little bit afraid that like as more and more work output becomes AI driven, that we're just going to be like remixing versions of the past forever, and that somehow culture is going to get kind of ossified and locked in amber, and that it's going to be harder and harder to do new things. For me that was a big role of kind of agencies too, where they were really the experts of kind of what was coming, both from kind of a trend perspective, but like understanding competitive landscape and really trying to help clients find opinionated but forward-looking like brand positioning too. Curious about how you guys think about that, like that challenge, like as more and more of that job is either being facilitated by AI or being done by AI, like how you keep that like forward perspective.
Well, it's definitely a real concern, right? I mean, homogeneous design, kind of step and repeat, and so I think that's something that comes up in the conversation a lot, and it should, for good reasons as well, right? That's why I think we're going to go through a phase, or we probably are in a phase where there's so many ways to create content very quickly that we're going to be sort of flooding the internet with trash, essentially, and it's going to be very difficult for brands to differentiate themselves. And then it comes back to the people that do it really well, the agencies that do the job really well. If it's on them to then continue to push and deliver for their clients, so their clients can then rise above that sort of sea of sameness and homogeneous sludge, which is happening. So I feel like it's going to come back round to agencies. I think the best of the pile will rise up, and design will be a premium. Branding will be a premium.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's the body language of your sort of like average enterprise customer these days when you knock on their door and tell them that you have an AI thing that they should look at?
Depends who you're talking to. If you're talking to someone on the sort of the compliance or legal team, I mean it's a different reaction if you're talking to someone on the design or the marketing team. But I think that everybody is a little bit skeptical, but also ultra curious as well. And I think it's only natural that, people think that AI might take their jobs away, right? I mean, and we're very conscious of that as well. And I think that when we're demoing Obello, I think, when they quickly learn that, that's not our intention, and that our intention is just to kind of 10x or superpower their creative abilities, then they relax. I mean, as we talked about earlier, Obello is really, it's removing the more menial, repetitive, production-related part of the process where designers don't really want to be doing that stuff anyway. They want their time back to think about like more conceptual, like storytelling, emotionally driven, creative. And so when we announced Obello, it was a genuine concern how the design community would react. But quickly they saw that this was not a threat. Obello is not a threat, and this is actually a tool that they can use to protect the work that they have been doing for their clients, and we have their support. So.
But one, the designers are definitely the people that are bringing Obello into their organization.
Yeah, they are championing us.
One of the early things that we released on Obello was a thing called Design Remix. And with Design Remix, you can throw on a logo on a canvas. Imagine throwing a logo on a canvas, a headline on a canvas, a sub-headline, and then like an image. And then we will recompose that. And it's just like it's like, am I feeling lucky or not? We will give you a new design, right? And that was originally started because our initial audience, we thought we're going to reach out, is basically our past startup clients. They don't have a lot of design resources. What if we gave them a tool that they can just drop in the ingredients and we'll cook them a plate? So when we showed that to a lot of our designer friends, they're like, nah, come on, man. Come on now, And then we later on pulled it from our products. But I think one of the big concerns for them is that when you do that, there is no one on the other side judging if this is this based on their vision of what the brand should look like. They care about those things. Internal teams really care about what is being pushed out there to the world. That's why they love the platform where they can design templates and then empower the rest of the organization to go in and use AI to make updates, right? They love that part. They just don't want us to give tools to the rest of their teams where they can generate designs that might not be exactly to their vision, to their aesthetics, even though we're trying to like, hey, if you give us enough designs, whatever you remix will look more like that. If you have a lot of negative space, it's easy for us because we just ingest all of your designs. We'll give you more of that. Yeah. It was just maybe overstepping a little bit in their craft.
Yep. It must be really important, just your backgrounds and your ability to even have those conversations with people where you have the credibility to approach people and talk about that. And then the sensibility to kind of strike that balance between how are you being helpful, but still respectful to the work people are doing.
Exactly.
Totally. Yeah. And that goes to how we train our models as well. We don't just pull people's designs from the internet. We intentionally create that content ourselves. Just putting ourselves in the shoes of a designer. I mean, they wouldn't want that, right?
Yeah. I think just as a group of people, a group of designers, engineers, founders, we really believe that the art of building is a craft in and of itself. That, relies on as much intuition as data, and is something that we just love, I think, talking about, just to push our own work to be better and better as a group too. But curious, what that phrase means to you guys. How you would describe the art of building, maybe how you express that in your own work.
I think the art of building for us, or personally for me, is the art of the imagination, right? I think when you're building, whether or not you're an architect or something like that, you would have to imagine, after I finish with this house, the people that are going to be living there, the family that they're going to be raising, the experience that they would have during holidays, what would that be like, So I think a lot of the things that when we are building, we're kind of imagining a future way in advance that we could achieve our goals, and what would that look like, And we always come back to Obello, and we're if we can do our job with all the most amazing technology that's available now, today, right? Wouldn't it be amazing if every single person out there can always create beautiful design? So a lot of it comes back to, can we build a product and that will achieve that in the future?
I'd say my interpretation of the art of building is quite different. It's more logistical and operational. Well, I kind of see it as, there are lots of things happening at Obello right now, right? There's a lot of things to manage, a lot of different work streams, people, process, right? And it's a bit like a conductor in an orchestra, where when everything is in time, when everything is balanced, it sounds beautiful. But then when something kind of just goes off a little kilter, you got someone on kettle drums in the back there that kind of goes out of beat, then it all starts to kind of get a little shaky. So for me, it's about keeping all of these different elements in check. It's about the correct prioritization. I mean, it's about, but it's also about keeping forward momentum and being as efficient as you can. So I think that's one of the things that personally I'm probably struggling with the most. It's the biggest challenge right now is just keeping everything in symphony. I mean, so that's how I kind of interpret the art of building. Yeah.
When you guys were thinking about raising money for Obello, like what you were looking for in investment partners?
In our pre-seed and our seed round, it was competitive. We had different, groups wanted to lead our round, and they were all amazing people, pre-seed all the way to seed. And one of the things that Ollie and I were like, oh my God, we're so lucky to be in this position. But at the end of the day, we look at finding our investors similar to how we think about co-founders, Mm-hmm. And I think Ollie and I, we're like, there are going to be more bad days than good days. That's just what we heard and we are experiencing as a startup founders, And we want to make sure that we have the people in the room that we can really lean into when we need help. Yeah. What do you think, Ollie?
Yeah, I would agree with all of those sentiments. I think the most important thing for us is we wanted to be in business with good people.
Yeah.
Right? That was like the number one thing. We wanted to be in business with people that understood what we were trying to do, that kind of respected the process that we're going through, that can add value, that we can go and just like grab some food and have a beer with, honestly, and have an honest, transparent dialogue without the fear of being judged or made to feel bad. I mean, after we met you, Tyler, we had some food in the city. I mean, Ben and I walked out of that and we're like, this is the person that we want in our corner. And I'll say it was the same for James at Obvious Ventures, who led our seed round. I mean, immediately after Ben and I got on the phone, we're like, this is the person that we want. So it was very clear to us, because this is not a sprint, this is a marathon, right? And so, this is a multi-year venture, a multi-year partnership. So the last thing you want to do is, kind of get into a relationship with people that you're not aligned with. We're very grateful, honestly.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's a real privilege.
Yeah.
Real journey.
Yeah.